we thought it would be fun today we didn't expect to talk politics and taxes. We actually thought we would come in today and talk a little bit about traveling. Not traveling overseas, but traveling in the game of basketball, which is always a beloved topic of discussion for fans, for players, coaches, and also referees, as I'm learning.
Absolutely.
Not a referee myself, but the last several months, breaking bread with referees, I see that they also have a peculiar interest in the traveling violation. And so Kane, I think, in particular, had an angle on this. And Kane, I'm really interested to kind of get your thoughts on why fans like myself and others just don't understand traveling.
Yeah, so my theory is, since my son and daughter are in that playing age, they're, young teenagers now, and I've been watching them play since they were middle schoolers and younger than that. I really think it boils down to, as parents and coaches, we watch our children from the time they pick up a ball until the time they get through high school and maybe even into some lower level college stuff. We watch referees call travels that are not travels all the time. So anything that looks like a travel, they call it. And it's become so ingrained in the fan and the coach and the parents that watch their children that anything that looks funny is a travel. And so people get used to it now, and now they move on to big time college basketball fans, and their kids stop playing ball and they're watching the NBA, and they're seeing moves out there that are like, oh, that looked weird. Why didn't you call it travel? And there's just so much more to it. And not to mention the differences in the rule between the professional game and the high school and college game. So it's always a hot topic. It's always fun to talk about. But my theory is people just get used to officials seeing travel called incorrectly for so many years, over and over and over again, that they just assume anything that looks funny is now a travel, and they expect it. And when professionals or people who are, understand the rule a little bit better are not calling things that are awkward but legal, they get upset.
So what do you feel like are the things that get called as travels at younger, earlier levels, at lower levels, that are not really travels?
I see a lot of jab step with an upper body fake and then go get called travels right away, even though the player is keeping their pivot foot, just because that upper body movement makes it look different. A lot of step throughs, which you see like the WNBA players are fantastic at it, and the referees are great at officiating correctly. So like a pump fake, step through to a layup, that gets called a travel a bunch in the kids game. And you don't really see it a lot in the men's game, so it kind of surprises referees that work boys basketball, even up into the men's college and in the pro game. You do see it, like the European players are very good at it, so I see it done well in the field. I'm watching a little bit of FIBA ball right now, and they're good at step through, and the officials there are really good at calling it correctly. So I just think it's not a move used a lot on the men's side. So in the United States, you see referees called all the time because they get surprised. They're not finding the pivot foot and watching the footwork of the player. They're just refereeing space, and all of a sudden something looks weird and everybody yells and they call it travel.
I think sometimes also fans have this misconception about steps in between a dribble that's not a gather. It's like, well, there's a lot of steps. It's just like it's a very not scientific knee-jerk reaction. Like, I just see a lot of steps. There's just traveling in there somewhere,
Yeah, as long as you're dribbling the ball, there's no rule against how many steps you can take. You can dribble it really high and keep your hand on top of it by your head, and if you can stomp your feet 20 times before the ball comes down, there's nothing against that.
Yeah.
It's really what you do when you pick the ball up.
And to that point, Sony, I think this was last season. I was in Indiana, and we had a play where one play that a lot of fans, players, coaches think is a travel is when people bobble the ball as they're running, right? So this happened in Indiana, and shout out to TJ McConnell, because I'm going to give him a quick shout out right here. So TJ, good guy there in Indiana. So we have a timeout after this. I don't know how much time has transpired, but he comes to me in the timeout and he asks why this is not a travel. And so I explained to him, your steps don't count while you're bobbling the ball. So literally you can go 20 steps. If you're bobbling the ball, none of those steps count. Not one. It's completely 0, 0, 0, right? And I knew what he was going to say after that because I've heard it so many times. So he goes, do you mean to tell me I can bobble the ball all the way down the court and it's not a travel? I said, absolutely. You are 100% right. I said, see, you're already learning. You're already a better referee now. And sure enough, the same thing happened later in the game where a guy's bobbling again and it is a few steps in there. And he looks at me. I caught his eyes because I was looking for him, like, because I knew I was going to, like, see, it just happened again and it's not a travel. He's like, I got it. I got it. And so that is one that if you're bobbling the ball, there are no steps until you have possession of it. And then then your step count starts. So that's one where I know people really they think it's always a travel and it's not. It's not.